jewelry making friends. My name is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my work table and welcome to my channel. Today was one of those days where I went shopping in my own stash. So this is what I've come up with. Sometimes when I just need a little outing, I'll go get a coffee and go walk around one of the craft stores. And a few weeks ago I did that, went into Joann's. If you're in America, it's our national chain. And I picked up these for 60% off. It is a little strand of connectors and they're in like an antique bronze finish. And my idea is to take one of these and use it to make a faux bolo necklace, a very feminine floral bolo necklace, and in these beautiful summer colors, that ocean water color, you know, the turquoise blue and a little bit of teal in there. And I just think it is so pretty. And then in my stash, I had a magnetic clasp that I got from the sister website to Bargain Bead Box. It's called Bead Box Bargains. I can leave a link below. I have a discount code if you are not a subscriber to their monthly box, and once you are a subscriber, you get a coupon in your box that is good for the whole month for 30% off. So I do a lot of shopping on that website. You can still shop the website if you don't subscribe to the box, you just don't get the discount. But these are things from that website, these beautiful little flower spacers in the antique bronze. I mean, they are just lovely. For being so tiny, they are so detailed. And I had a few of these little barrel bumpy spacers left over. And then in my stash, also from the Bead Box Bargains, I have these 4mm Aztec gold check glass little beads, and they just work so well with the colors in my connector. So those are out here to maybe be spacers. I just, when I go shopping in my supplies with an idea in my head, I just like pull anything out that I think might work. I may not use everything, but that way when I'm designing, I have like a lot of choices. These are a few little glass crackle beads that are left over from Curated Bead Box. And then I have this amazing, this is from a website that's gone out of business, but this is a check glass. I am sure this might not be too difficult to find. This is an aqua fire polished faceted glass, and it has a topaz luster over the part that is not aqua. And so that topaz luster, again, just picked up that antique gold or antique brass look that I'm going for. And then just a little bit brighter bead here that really worked well with the crystals in the little rhinestones in this connector. So my idea for this bolo necklace is, again, to use a little craft store item. This is a beadsmith item, and it is a waxed Brazilian cord. I was going to tell you the millimeter because somebody will always ask me, but it is not on the package that I can see. But what I did is just checked all the beads that I really love for this project, and I just checked to make sure that I'm not going to struggle stringing. So my cord fit through all my spacers, it fit through my check glass, just glides right on. So I do that before I get started. And also I always find that I can't do anything until I unleash the beads. So my idea with this is to go ahead and do my kind of faux bolo necklace with one of these connectors, and wouldn't that make a fabulous coordinating bracelet? I love the odd numbers like for a bracelet, so I might space them out a little bit more than what they are, but that is definitely a possibility. So I'm just going to set this aside for another project. And I have to just pull out of the camera really quickly because if you're familiar, a bolo, it can be a tie for a man, is a little bit of a Western flair, and normally this part on a bolo tie will slide up and down, but mine is going to be faux. So I am going to affix this, and I'm not exactly sure. I think I'm going to do a bead top and bottom and then tie a knot. I'm not exactly sure, but I will pull out of the camera for just a moment because I did not measure my waxed cord, and I am not even sure, to be honest, if I'm going to use the magnetic clasp. I was thinking that just to pop this over my head might be a cool design. So, you know, that's when I start designing, especially even if I've done a sketch, it's all subject to change because especially on a project like this where I just like had an idea and said, let me go see what I have to work with, and pulled everything out, you know, from my own supplies. It's just really, you know, kind of design on the fly, freestyle. The other thing, if you're not super familiar with wax cord and knotting techniques, is knotting takes up a lot of length of your cord. So I usually determine the length that I want the necklace and at least double it, but sometimes I even triple it, because when I'm kind of playing like this, I don't know if I'm going to knot in between every single bead, or if I'm going to create sections, or if I'm going to have some of the cord showing in between knots. You know, I don't actually know that yet. So I'm pretty generous with my cord. So I'm just going to pull back just a little bit and get my desired length, and I will probably at least double it. Okay, so when you start off a knotting project, your stringing material is ridiculously long. So the first few, until you have some beads and things on this strand, it's a little bit to manage, but I actually think it's fun. And I think this is Beadsmith from Michaels, and they had these little things, and I've had this for a while, where you got like a little grouping of colors. But if you don't have a Michaels, you can also find really beautiful Brazilian waxed cord on Lima Beads. It's one of my favorite websites, and they have different diameters or different millimeters of thickness. So if you have an idea what beads you want to be working with, you can, you know, kind of choose your thickness of cord that way. So to start out with, I am going to use the magnetic clasp. And I'm going to do something a little different. Normally I would go ahead and do my whole design and put the clasp on last, but on this project I am going to put this clasp on first and cut my cord in half so that I can run it down both sides of this connector. And I'm just going to do like 2 or 3 overhand knots. The wax grabs on, and it really is beautiful for knotting. But I will usually go back and put a little bit of beader's glue, flexible drying glue like GS Hypo Cement on that knot, just to make sure, especially when you're pulling a magnetic clasp on and off, just to make sure that it, you know, the knot doesn't wiggle loose. And I'm going to do, as I said, this is going to look a little bit strange, but I am going to go ahead and tie this right on, and then find the middle of my cord and cut it there. Okay, this is my and then start designing my pattern. And I'm just going to give myself a nice angled cut on both ends for stringing. I generally don't put anything on waxed cord to stiffen the ends, because if you kind of pinch and twist, it makes a pointy like end, like a little natural needle. But if you wanted to, you could coat this with super glue and like kind of pull it through a piece of plastic. You can also brush some clear nail polish on it and let it dry, and then you'll have a nice hard end. But I don't normally do that. I normally just go with it and start stringing. So, you know, whatever makes the stringing process fun and pleasant for you, that's my advice. So I am going to start creating a little pattern of beads that comes down to around this section here. I'm thinking at around the 18-19 inch area of my cord, and then I will string this on and then separate these and continue with the pattern and create some kind of a fun little drop for the two ends. So again, it's going to be a faux bolo. It's going to look like this could actually slide up and down, but I am going to affix it in one spot. So this is the really fun part, just really to start stringing. So I think that I'll start in the very back right here and just leave a little bit of space and start with a knot. So on this one, because of it being a bolo style, I am going to let a little bit of my waxed cord show. So there's different ways to do this. You can make it so that your beads just cover all the cord and the knots are the spacers in between the beads, or you can space it out a little bit so that you see the cord. And since my cord looks so great with all my elements, I think I'm going to allow some of this cord to show. And that will also make the necklace less heavy because cord doesn't weigh very much. If you pack it with beads and knots, it's going to be a little bit heavier necklace. So I think I'm going to allow a little bit of the cord to show in between my my beads. And you absolutely don't need a tool to do this knotting technique, but the way that I knot, I love my knotting tweezer. I just love to work with this. It allows me to place my knots exactly where I want them. It is a really skinny precision tip tweezer, and I just really enjoy making my knots with it. And so for those of you who are new to a knotting technique, whoops, I wanted to start with this. I'll just show you. I'm going to do most of this off camera because as much as I love a stringing and knotting project, and for me it's so relaxing and so fun, it's very repetitive. So I'll show you what I'm doing and then I'll go off camera and get it all done and come back and show you the rest. So I'm just stringing my first bead down to that knot and then making an overhand knot and pulling my cord through, and then I take my knotting tweezer and reach through the loop that I just made, and wherever I want that knot to end up, that's where I grab with my tweezer, and then I just pull. And it pulls the knot right down to the tweezer, and then I can use the tip of the tweezer to lock the knot into place. And that way I'm not using my fingernails as tools and I don't get unwanted space. Like, I have total control of where my knots land. So I'm going to leave another little gap and just put a knot in there. And again, you don't need a tool for this, but I really like to look at my spacing with my tweezer and say, okay, that's exactly where I want that knot. So for me, I just like get it perfect every time. And I'm just going to continue in that way with a little pattern. Let's see, maybe I'll do one of these next, and I'll check back in with you. I'll finish one side and then I'm going to make the other side match, and I will check back in and kind of show you what my pattern looks like, and then we'll string this guy on and decide how we're going to, if there's going to be just a knot above each one or a spacer bead. I haven't decided yet. The other thing I love about a knotted project like this is as I'm sitting here stringing and knotting and choosing my next bead, I look at my components and I make design decisions that way. So it's a really beautiful, relaxing project for me. I really, really love this. So I'm going to pause here and I will be back and show you what I have come up with pattern wise. So I have finished stringing and creating this little pattern. It's maybe a little bit random. I just kind of wanted the gold spacers to kind of appear in between my glass beads, and I did this side and then went down the other side and just did it exactly the same. And I have thread on. I finished off with just the little knots on each side. Let's see what's happened here. I got a little twisted, and I have just thread my little connector thread down each side, and I'm just going to pull that up to the knots. And here's where I have been looking at this and deciding if I wanted to now draw these two together, but I really like the lines and the design of this being two strands coming off of this, but I'm going to change my pattern down here. So I have used some GS Hypo Cement. It is a glue that dries not crunchy hard, so it's really good for waxed cord, and you know, especially for a knot where you're going to be pulling the clasp. And so you always want to do your gluing before you trim away. So I did this one earlier and it's done, and I just wanted to show you that I just took the tip of the glue and it dries clear. I just put it like around the knot so that when it's being pulled on to take it on and off, it will not wiggle loose. And I'm just going to come now and just trim this really short. And sometimes when I'm doing a necklace like this, I will leave these little tails and separate the fibers and kind of make a little tassel out of it with some beads and another knot on the end. But on this one, I just decided to do a clean clasp. And I really love the way this is looking. And so, yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm going to do that same thing that I've been doing and just get a knot right here underneath my connector. And on this one, I think I'm even going to make a double knot, like a surgeon's knot, and do that same thing where I reach inside, because I want that knot to land right there at the end of my connector. And the reason I am making this a little bit thicker of a knot, the holes in the connector are pretty small, but I just felt like gravity is always going to be pulling that direction, and I want to make sure that, you know, my little charm connector or my little bedazzled connector stays where it is. So that's what it's looking like, and I'm going to do the same thing on this other side and do a double knot, just loop it through just to make it thicker. Sometimes if you're knotting with waxed cord and you have beads with really large holes and they're not holding, that is a really good technique to make sure those beads stay where you want them. And I didn't need to do that. It was unnecessary for the rest of the piece, but for here, I just felt like that it would be a good thing to make sure that connector never slips down into my strung bead. So that is what it is looking like, and I just love it. I think it is going to be such a unique piece. I really, really love it. So that top part of the necklace is done. And again, as I always happens to me when I'm stringing and knotting, that I make a lot of design decisions. And so with what I had left, like I have pretty much used every single one of these little bumpy barrel spacers. I really loved stacking the three like that. It kind of took on the shape of an elongated bead or a textured bead with them being stacked like that. So I really love that, but that only left me with 4. So I've also don't want to continue with this same pattern down here. I want to make the bottom a little bit heavier with metal. So that is my plan. So I'm going to just start on this side and continue with my knotted technique, leaving a little bit of my cord showing. I really like that look. Do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to do one side at a time, but I'll go ahead and get this side done too. Just grabbing my cord at the same place. And you know, I did not measure. I literally have done the eyeball thing as I was adding beads and knotting. So just because I've done so much of this, I am able to do that, but you may want to measure if you're going to do this project. But mine came out pretty even because, you know, I'm just used to it. So I just literally eyeballed my spaces in between. I know some of you are going to ask. So what I was thinking that I would do to kind of make this a little bit heavy with metal is string on a flower bead and continue with that little bit of space that I've been doing, but maybe make it a little bit smaller, and then use my last two bumpy spacers in between. So I'll show you what the plan is, and I'll get it done and then repeat on the other side the same exact thing. So I think I'm just going to make the space even shorter that I have been in the other part of the necklace. Just, you know, just that little turquoise bit. And then I'm going to thread on two spacers. And like I said, I have used, this is all of them that I had. So I'm just like adjusting and creating my pattern based on what I have left to work with. So it looks like that. Just wanted it to be a little bit heavier with metal. So then I'm going to move into a tiny little bead pattern and continue to make these spaces a little bit tighter than I did up here, just to differentiate the pattern above this component and below. So I'm going to continue adding this little bit in and repeat the same thing on this side. And when I get to the end, my two drops at whatever length, and I haven't really even determined the length yet. I had some check glass, let me pull them out and show you. I had a little check glass mix from Howcraft, which is Michael's Carrie's Howcraft, and I used the flower spacers and a ball head pin and just created this little drop. I wire wrapped it because I do want to loop my waxed cord through there and tie a nice tight knot, and that's going to be the finish. And I'm going to do another one, so I'll come back at the end and do that with you, and that's going to be my drop. And I just thought this looked so pretty because it's a different shape but the same glass and the same finish as my cool beads that I used up here. So I thought that would just be a really pretty way to end the necklace. So let me finish this side and I will be back and show you the final bit. You guys, I love the way this turned out. I mean, I really love it. I think it is stunning. I departed a little bit from my original plan of what I was doing up here. I decided to really change up my pattern. So I did 3 beads in between a set of knots, 3 beads in between a set of knots, and again 3 beads, the same ones that I used here. And then I did a really chunky knot for my little wire wrapped drop, and I like the weightiness on the bottom of it, and I just think this is elegant but fun at the same time, and I just love it. And honestly, this is fabulous summer jewelry, but with this antique brass color or antique bronze color, and you know, it's a little bit darker. This turquoise could go like with a brown turtleneck in the fall and just be so stunning. I am super excited with the way this turned out. So I'm just going to show you how I finished this off. I just took a ball head pin and threaded on one of my check glass beads and one of my beautiful little flower spacer beads. And one of the reasons this is so awesome for a drop is because this necklace is going to move and dangle, and this little charm that I'm making is two-sided. So no matter which way it goes around, it's always going to look good. And one of the reasons I wire wrapped, I had a couple reasons for doing it. I did want my flower and my check glass to kind of be facing forward, but also because I'm tying a knot, I didn't want to take a chance on a simple loop, slipping out of my waxed cord. So I'm just grabbing a hold of that little stack of beads and putting a 90-degree bend. And then I'm going to place my round nose pliers right at the bend and fold that head pin over the top of the pliers like that, and then rotate the pliers out of my way and then bring that wire around. And if it's not centered, I'll just roll my wrist back and make sure that loop is centered. And when I take it away, I have a really great loop. And then I tend to use my bent chain nose pliers and, backwards so that everything's out of my way, and hold that loop and lock it into place. And these head pins are so stiff. It's not a very thick wire, but it must be the material that they're made out of. I could not do it with my fingers. And you could do a messy wrap here if you like, but I am just going to wrap right down to my beads. I didn't even trim away the tail, which you could if you rather than struggle with it, but I decided to use the entire length of the head pin. Okay, I'm sure there's nothing sharp. I need to straighten this one a little bit. Okay, so my second little drop is ready, and I just came and threaded on and just did one knot overhand and then looped the thread back through and just did it a couple of times. And I'm going to just kind of check my space since I didn't offset this, which I often do on a design like this. I will offset my two drops, but on this one for some reason I felt like keeping them the same. I don't know why. I'm just going to loop it back through and just work that knot down to my wrapped loop and then bring it through another time. So it's nice and sturdy, but also it adds like a chunkiness to the top of this little drop. Go one more time just to make sure it doesn't come off. And I will show you what I did on the other side with my GS Hypo Cement. And I like to kind of use my pliers to make sure that knot is really locked in place. And then I'm just going to take my GS Hypo Cement, and it has such a nice fine tip, and so you can really like place the glue right in all the crevices of the knot where it might be likely to come undone. And I'll tell you, because it takes a few minutes for it to dry, so I will, after I have the knot coated, I'm going to take my pliers and pull again. Just pull again. So when that dries, I know that that little dangle that I made is not coming off. So I'm going to wait for this to dry before I remove my excess. But I did even consider stringing a few small beads and tying a knot and having another kind of tassel. But as I said, on this one, it's not really I don't know, I just kind of liked it, and I got the feeling of it. So this is way too long to show you on my mat, but I will put this on Gabriella Eva so you can see how it hangs. And I just hope that, I'll just tell you, I really love knotted projects. And if you've been on my channel before, you know that I do a lot with different knotting techniques, and I really love it. If you're a person that has any kind of arthritis or pain in your hand, this is very easy on the hands. And one of the other things I love about knotting with different cords is how fluid the pieces are and lightweight, how soft they are. So for, you know, the warmer time of the year, it is the perfect stringing material. And for me, I just find it so relaxing to string and knot and kind of do this pattern play that I did here. So I really hope you found inspiration in this project. If you are going to try to go shopping in your own stash the way that I did, the advice that I would have is to look for commonality in your elements. So like these check beads were a different shape, but the same color and finish as my others. And I looked at the metal in this component that I had, and went in my stash where I have antique bronze and antique brass, and looked for some spacers that complement, that have those same colors. And then I just matched up the colors of my beads to the crystals that were in the component, and different shades of the same tone work really well because it gives your piece a lot of interest. And you know, so sometimes it's wonderful to have a kit or a box that's curated because you don't have to think about it too much. But if you are going to go into your own stash, those are just some design tips, if you will. I have a lot of years of doing this, so that's kind of what I look for, and maybe it will help keep you from being overwhelmed when you go looking into your own beads. So I do hope you found inspiration or were entertained by this little project at least, and I hope everyone is safe and well and having fun on your beading mats, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, jewelry making friends.